you've seen?
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess that was early on in my career. We had the opportunity to work with North Ballarat in the VFL, and yeah, they actually did really well at getting a lot of exercise science students coming through from the University of Ballarat, and had a bit of a program where we started out as sports trainers and ended up more or less running their rehab department, and really sort of brought that professional side into what was happening with the rehab in the club at that time as semi-elite sports people. So, and I guess it gives you the opportunity, and something that I've always been passionate about is working with the athletes in their training and their everyday conditioning, knowing them and their bodies, and being able to look at the preventative side of things in getting them working as optimally as possible from what we can see from a functional perspective. And then also knowing that when an injury does happen to occur, being able to be there on the spot from the start, get them started with a good program, being able to assess that early and get them doing as much as possible so that it limits their time away from their sport. And so, yeah, I guess having some really good outcomes particularly with some of the more major injuries like your ACL, recos, shoulder dislocations, that type of thing, just getting them fit and strong as soon as we can after those type of injuries. So it just decreases the rehab time, and I think it's also beneficial when you've got a good rapport already with the athletes that you're working with, to be able to then get the most out of them with their rehab as well. So I think there's lots of elements that kind of make it good to work in that arena. Certainly now there's a lot more science with the conditioning and the sports training through a lot of AFL clubs. Obviously sports science has had its impact there, but yeah, and as far as exercise physiology goes, that was one of our early ways to be able to get our foot in the door in plying our trade, and being able to, I think what we do really well is work with the whole person. So we can look at things from the whole training perspective, from when they're healthy and fit, right through to, before and after injury, before and after surgery, and getting people back out onto the track. So we kind of stay there through the whole process, which is really good. Yeah, well, he certainly didn't have the range of movement there that we'd like to see, particularly for someone that needs to be able to have a bit of forward momentum when they're kicking. So he was quite restricted in that regard, which then has its impact on how he's able to generate power with jumping, even just in the wrestling and that type of thing, being able to sort of get the power that he needs out of his hips, and even the stability that he then needs to be able to use his upper body with, with the wrestling, with boxing, with all the sides of it. So it was limiting his ability to do all of that. Obviously it has an impact on the flexibility as well, which with the jiu-jitsu, there's a fair amount of that required as well. So it was having some limitations in how he could develop his strength and his power, and just his general flexibility and mobility through the hips beforehand. Look, he's been coming along really well. I was really pleased with how he responded after the first surgery, and you could certainly then see a big difference from one side to the other in terms of his flexibility, and also his strength and his muscle recruitment with what we were doing. We've got to remember at the moment that the second one's actually, a little bit behind the first one. I'd say we've could have a tendency to try and maybe push it a little bit too much sometimes, because he has been feeling really good. He's been responding really well, and yeah, you're just expecting it to catch up to the other one. And possibly it will come a little bit quicker, because we've now got a good amount of movement in both hips, and that's coming along really well. So I think pleased with the results to date, certainly in terms of the mobility. So yeah, we'll keep working on freeing up the joints there a little bit before we really get stuck into the strength and power and the weight bearing exercise. But we're starting to do little bits of that, getting him involved with the Pilates reformer and doing a little bit of work through the middle with his trunk and postural control, just re-establishing all of that and getting a bit of flexibility back in there, and we'll go from there. I think as our rehab techniques improve in time and we know more about things, we are able to, I guess, speed up the rehab progress to a certain extent compared to what used to happen, and you would have seen that over time with your ACL injuries and the recovery from those type of surgeries and things. So the more we get to know about it and the more we learn about the impact of what we're doing, I guess the better the processes become. But yeah, it is a tough one because it's all on the surface now. We can't actually directly say, or I can't. Obviously I can get more information back from the surgeon from scans and things to get that guidance in regards to what's happening with the tissue healing and the joint response internally, I guess, and allowing that time to heal and recover. But then on the other side of that, trying to make sure that we get the most out of his flexibility and his mobility in the early stages before things, stiffen up and tighten up again. So yeah, we're just wanting to, you've got to tread that line down the middle of not doing too much too early, but making sure that we are getting as much out of it as he's ready to get at the moment, which, yeah, that's the science, that's the job, I guess. Okay, a lot of what we've been doing so far, so Jake's been spending a lot of time on the bike, getting the hips moving. Then we'll spend a bit of time with him stretching, but also with me facilitating some of the stretching, so I can get a bit of a feel of where the joint's at, what the limitations are, and where to push and where not to push. So we've been doing a lot of that kind of hands-on facilitated stretching and mobility. When we're here, we've been doing a little bit in terms of starting to get him working on improving his internal rotation of his hips to get more movement there, and starting to do a little bit of strengthening through the glutes primarily to support him, help recover from the surgery and support him to then take that next phase. So from the first surgery, we've been doing some step-ups and things to start to get those movement patterns firing again, get some strength and control through that movement. And it's because it's not about just getting the control through his hips, but also then seeing how the knees are tracking and how the ankles are tracking, because we've had other things in the past. And it's like the song says, everything's connected. So it's really looking at the whole body and how he's moving and getting all of those chains of mobility going. So we've been doing a lot of work on the reformer with some Pilates. We can't do that here today because we don't have them here, so Jake comes to see me elsewhere for that. So yeah, at this stage there's just been starting to get a bit of work in just engaging, particularly through the posterior chain, so your hamstrings, your glutes, back muscles, abdominals, getting that all working together, getting that sort of tension back there and working through that. So.